Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to an extremely special session today. I have the extreme honor and privilege to introduce to you a man who has always been ahead of the times. Someone who has the ability to identify trends early and act on them. Someone with strong implementation skills. A self-made man, a visionary, a thought leader, a man with an earnest dedication, and a man with stellar leadership skills. A man who is extremely humble, unassuming, but who has been extremely successful in everything he has done, from his early days in ICICI, to the New Development Bank, to now as the chairman of the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we welcome Mr. K.V. Kamath. Thank you so much, sir, for agreeing to do this. You are an inspiration for almost, if not every one of us in this room. So we're very, very grateful to you. So without further ado, sir, I'll get on with the first question. Sir, under your leadership, ICICI became one of the largest and most successful private sector banks in the country, where assets grew from 21,000 crores to almost 4 lakh crores. What was your vision when you started taking ICICI onto its high growth trajectory?
Well, when we need to go back quite some time to 96, 97. At that time, whatever we did was to survive. So it's like that plant which needs to figure out how to catch the sunlight, and you bend yourself into various shapes to do that. And I'm sure most entrepreneurs out here have gone through that moment when you have to struggle and you have to pitch. So what helped us change was new things that were happening around us, which had not yet caught on here. For example, the advent of technology, the freeing up of technology. In financial services business, products which had not yet launched. So for example, ICICI came from a project finance background. But except for HDFC, which gave home loans, there wasn't anybody who gave any other type of loans. Credit card had just started. So building this at scale, I think, helped us chart a new path and create that excitement. And everything with the technology, I would say, base or foundation. And that made a difference. I'm talking of late 90s, early 2000s.
Absolutely. And so you spoke about technology. So long before digital and technology became buzzwords, you championed the modernization of the Indian banking sector with initiatives like online banking, mobile banking, ATMs, etc. You transformed ICICI from a development finance institution into a diversified financial services conglomerate. So how did you drive this change? Because we as entrepreneurs, despite being leaders in young organizations, find it extremely hard to drive change.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's difficult to drive change. At times you need to figure out why are you doing it. So let me explain our purpose at that point of time. Again, you're talking about somewhere around 2000. ICICI Bank was a small bank with just about 50 or 100 branches. There are only 100 ATMs in the country. The largest bank in the country had 10,000 branches. And we were being given 50, a license for 50 new branches a year. So the arithmetic is very simple. If your largest competitor has got 10,000 branches and you are given 50 branches a year, it will take you 200 years to get there. So how do you break this? And how do you create momentum? That basically drove everything we did. And the answer was technology. So we said, year one, we'll roll out 1,000 ATMs. There are 100 ATMs in the country, never mind. We'll roll out 1,000. And we'll put 10 ATMs around each branch. So there's a catchment area. And that thought pervaded into everything else we did. Whether it was ATMs or whether it was the internet or whether it was doing things out of a back office or so that the branch got freed up to do things. A branch running 2 shifts and so on. So variety of things which made for the ease of dealing with us. And the very interesting thing, and probably that part of it still is true, you give the customer convenience. Convenience is king. Not your brand, not trust, which I as a banker would find it very, very difficult to acknowledge. It is not trust, it is convenience. Convenience trumps trust. So we basically scaled on that platform, the technology platform, and created the convenience for the customer.
No, absolutely. And so just building off of that, so so scale versus niche. You mentioned, you all had 100 outlets versus other people who had more. So how should we as entrepreneurs think about our businesses?
Again, in today's context, if you cut to today, you have problems are not different. I would put it very simply as the theory of constraints. So our constraint was somebody has got 10,000 branches, I got 100 branches or 50 branches, I'm allowed 50 new branches there. How do I overcome this challenge? If you look around to today's challenges that you have, the same thing it's all over again. Somebody else is very big, you are small, how do you do it? So basically you will need to reinvent what you are doing and do something different from what the other party is doing so that you build a scale. So to me it is learning from how to handle constraints and then scaling up on that. That generally works. Any incumbent who is challenged by a newco, the newco goes through the same challenges.
Absolutely. And so you were able to identify trends early enough and leverage them as almost a first mover advantage. So what are 2 or 3 practical steps that you think entrepreneurs today can do to identify trends early in their respective industries to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I think it's not too difficult. If you, there are a whole lot of dots there are a whole lot of pointers there. If you can put those dots together and collectively read the pointers, you get on the right way. Let me give you an example. So I said technology. So it's this we are talking about late 90s. When you look at banking technology, it was only mainframes. Of course, today nobody understands what is or was a mainframe, though some very large banks still run mainframes. So we said we can't afford mainframes. So what next? So we said, okay, the Sun Microsystem boxes that are out there, I think that works for us. So let's try. And so at every stage it was experimentation, taking a bit of risk. Then you master what you're doing. You have also mastered risk, and then you grow. I'm talking about banking where you always need to be able to identify the risk a priori and square it before you take the next step. But honestly, in the launch of all the businesses we did, the biggest risk was technology because we were doing virtually everything for the first time in India of say 25 years back. So other than that, business itself was not a problem. But again, at times you come across different sorts of challenges. Let me put one in context. That's not a problem today for banks, but it's a problem today for many other businesses. They said, we don't have people. So we have hit that wall number of times. Again, theory of constraints. You don't have people, try what you could do. So I'll give you something we did in 2001 or 2. We said we'll codify all our training material, give it to NIT, you run it. You run the program, you have 5,000 kids passing out, we will take the entire 5,000. So we did it for 2-3 years, and other banks started hiring from this school. Then we found that we didn't have senior people in the branch. We said we'll tie up with the university to set up a campus. So we set up a campus in Bangalore with Manipal University to have 1,000 kids, graduates who are doing a 1-year program, who would be fit for maybe a deputy branch manager or a senior person in the branch. These were the short skills those days. People with right, I would say, technology skills to sit in the branch didn't exist. So you had to train them to be bankers and to be versatile in technology. So every single thing that you can think of, you will hit a constraint. It's no point in sitting back and saying, I have a constraint, I don't know what to do. You'll have to go out there and try to figure out how to resolve it.
Thank you for that, sir. And so what I take away is to identify what are the constraints and that one key constraint and to find a solution to address that.
See, it's very interesting. I'll talk of a company which is now your company, First Source.
Yeah.
So how did First Source happen? First Source happened because we wanted to centralize a whole lot of facilities, which of course they have now become much bigger and much. But we alone did not have the scale to do that in the bank, and we could not do it in the bank. So we said we'll put a company which will not only do this work for us, but will also do it for global banks and institutions. So first source was a vehicle which had scale because it was not only going to serve our need, but it would also serve a global need. But in the event, what happened was, as this grew off, I say the bank itself grew at such a pace that we said we could do a lot of things, these things ourselves, and first source then we said it's probably better handled by somebody else, because as a bank, that became a constraint for us. But the original idea was we can't build scale in these businesses, so let's serve the world and then set this company up.
No, and thank you so much for setting that up, sir. I think it's
you
been a
you guys
good
have done
story for us.
Brilliant job with it.
Thank you. So, sir, in this fast-paced world of innovations, disruptions are everywhere. So, what is your take on cryptos as a currency and an asset class? And what role do you envision for emerging technologies like blockchain, AI?
Yeah, I will separate the two. So, crypto, as I say, is this is again, I think almost everybody that I know has had the same refrain. As a banker, I am very nervous about anything which doesn't have what we call an underlying. So there's nothing underlying this, so I don't want to venture into. So it becomes a glossy stone, maybe, which or a dull stone on which you are speculating. So anyway, as of now, that's not something I would like to spend time on. But blockchain, the underlying technology, I think has a lot of uses. Though I must say that what we thought of when crypto took off 3-4 years back, things riding on blockchain have not taken off at the same pace. We thought of. We'll wait and see. AI is a different, I would say, equation, I would put it, because there, I think the applications that are coming or the end use that are coming out of it are enormous. And my view is that it's not going to be a sudden moment where, oh, AI is on us. It's going to be part of everything that we do, and it's going to be integrated into the business that we do, and that's how we will continue. Like one fine day, maybe people started using machines. Those machines, changed the way they did things, and then it became computers. Computers changed the way you do things. I think AI is going to pervade into whatever you do, and you will have a time. It won't be a sudden disruption one fine day.
Absolutely, so. So in 2015, you took on a new challenge as the first ever president of the New Development Bank, also known as the BRICS Bank, which was a big transition from a global perspective. So, sir, what were some of the challenges you faced at that time, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the actual challenge was a challenge of the mind. Doing that job, I don't think I was really worried about. It's a development bank, and my first 25 years were in development banks. The biggest constraint is constraint of my mind, but it didn't take me too long to resolve it, and that is, I was 68 when I was asked whether I would go to Shanghai and reside there for 5 years and set this bank up, virtually with no staff. And I can say on virtually day one with no capital. So we had to manage 6 months without capital, build a team and so on. But it was fun because you had 5 countries coming together and you worked with them. The challenge in setting up that bank was, to me, is not financial. It was basically but working with 5 different cultures. You had China, you had Brazil, you had Russia, and you had South Africa. Each one has a different approach to doing things. So how do you make it happen? So it was more an exercise, I would say, in diplomacy than an exercise in banking. Banking was there, but it was a diplomatic exercise rather than a banking exercise per se.
And any 1 or 2 tips from that experience in diplomacy that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think let me share something else that I saw in China. I would suggest whoever has not been to China to take a look at China, because that's what we will become in the next 15 years. I think things will go right, that's no question at all. I've seen Shanghai from 1988 onwards. So my first trip was in 88 when I was with the Asian Development Bank, and I've been thereafter going every 2 years. But the transformation in, say, the period 2005 to 2015 is nothing short of magical. So what I learned in this context is that there can be dramatic change in a very short period of time if you go about it right. And we can then analyze what are those things that we need to do right. And you end up having a modern city, probably the most modern in the world. And you have rural spaces which are developing. infrastructure which is connected and so on. Of course, now hindsight now, 5-7 years later, and this was actually clear to me even by say 2018 or so, that there is a debt crisis that is not come to the surface, and will come to the surface. So it has come to the surface now. So in growth, in the growth equation, we will have to keep in mind that you could have a challenge with a debt crisis, not the debt that individuals have borrowed, but the debt that has gone into certain growth initiatives, which either takes a very long time to repay, or is unproductive, and so on. So that needs to be addressed as a good learning, so that avoid the mistakes, but look at what is the end game and go on.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, we live in uncertain times in the midst of wars, supply chain disruptions, looming economic slowdown in many parts of the world. So, what do you think is in store for the Indian economy?
What is in store for us? I think let me put the growth equation into simple perspective. Growth happens when there's a long runway. And you look at India, any which way you look at it, there's a long runway. Let's start with a very simple thing. Let's take infrastructure. Let's take roads. Let's take railways. And let's take power. Just three key. Then you can put airports and other things as you go along, seaports and so on. We are short on all these things. So there is at least a 10 to 15 year runway to build this, which creates economic, rather rapid economic development. Because infrastructure is a very interesting category of investment, which during the process you are investing in infrastructure, growth happens. So this is during the incubating stage. And thereafter, once the infrastructure has been laid on the ground, economic benefits of that, the dividends from that infrastructure start happening. So there's a very long runway for infrastructure in terms of what it provides. The second is, you look at the other extreme, urban rejuvenation. You look at the third extreme, rural modernization, homes that need to be built for people. So you have a vast spectrum of things. And as I said, the China example has taught us maybe what not to do. At some point in time, probably the mistake there was to keep the 10% plus growth going. Your economic deployment of capital, that is for investment, for say infrastructure and other things, became less and less productive. So what, in the case of Japan earlier, we used to jokingly say, you try to keep growth going by building bridges to nowhere. So you build a bridge from here to another island, but that island is not habited. So you are building a bridge to nowhere, but you are building it because to that building phase, you have utilized a whole lot of things and there is some growth. But after that, it becomes a dead burden. So we are quite a distance away from that, maybe 15 to 20% distance away. Maybe one lesson is not to grow too high into double digits. Grow at the 7-8% that we are. And then of course you have got inflation to account for that. So I would think that there are lessons that have been learned which can be internalized and we could put it to good use.
And so any red flags that you think we should watch out for?
See, any country needs to look out for red flags. And today, the events of the last 2-3 years have shown red flags are plenty. Say, war created situation in Europe and the further west, the inflationary cycle, then rate increases which lagged that cycle, you're still paying for that, and so on. But in our case, not following, I would say, a path which you use all your learnings is the only risk that we have. Otherwise, we are on a great path for a long period of time. And I think we should reach the aspirations that we have set without much hassle if we keep to this path.
And so, because of the global economic uncertainty, despite India performing extremely well, what do you think are some of the things entrepreneurs today should keep in mind as they are building businesses? Because today they may be Indian, but tomorrow they would obviously have a global aspiration.
Yeah, I think the two things that I would think come to mind. One is India is the opportunity set. So concentrate on that Indian opportunity. There will be constraints, but if you think there are no constraints, if you go out, you would be wrong. There are constraints everywhere that you go. So one is look at India as your primary focal area. I don't think you would find any better opportunity anywhere else in the world at this point of time. Second is look for trends. You earlier on said looking for trends. You need to look at trends as you go along. What are the dots out there, and how do I connect those dots? Are there any pointers? Can I pull them into what I'm doing? And this never ends. Even today, that will go on in terms of what is happening around you.
And so today, a lot is being said about overvalued stocks in the stock market. Further, we see heavily loss-making companies or companies with minimal revenue having, over the roof kind of valuations. So is there a bubble building?
Now, we have to separate two things, the two things that you said. One is companies with thin balance sheets, with no top line, no bottom line, or maybe some top line but no bottom line, and so on. There, I think the thing is very simple. Buyer, be aware, or beware. Be aware or beware. I don't think there's any other thing that you can apply to these companies. Now, we take the other set of companies. You may say that, is a PE of 22 too high? You may quibble about should the PE be 19 or 22. Okay, you bought at 22. It will even out over a period of time. I don't think these things really matter in the long run. But if you are punting, then you probably are again into the buyer be aware or buyer beware category. So I would not concentrate too much on the stock market valuations. I would look at underlying growth and what that growth does to you. And is that growth going to sustain this company that you want to invest in? This would be the equation that I would look at.
Absolutely. And I think be aware and beware, I think, are very interesting mantras. So thank you for that. Sticking to the capital markets, they are at an all-time high. So as an entrepreneur, it is very tempting to raise capital at this point in time. So my question is, should one raise capital when you actually don't even require it, but external circumstances will allow you to raise it well, or should you not?
The answer is unequivocal yes.
Okay.
I've done that all, my career. So the first capital raise we did was 1988 or 89. That time I needed capital. And the Indian stock markets were, in a comatose state. So we said we will list in the US market. My investment banker said it's going to take 3 years. And then I want to do it in 3 months. And we did it in 84 days. So you did that. But secure to 2006-7, I didn't need capital at all. So, but conditions were right. Stock was right. So we did a 4 billion raise. That's now in history. When the rupee was at, 40 rupees or so at that point in time. I know it was 5 billion, not 4 billion. So we raised 20,000 crores at that point in time. We didn't need capital then, even through the Lehman crisis, even through the COVID crisis, I don't think the bank needed capital. So if you find an opportunity, you should raise capital. As a CEO, of course, you will not take shareholders' interest into account. But having that cushion is always good.
Absolutely. And so as entrepreneurs, one more word of advice, just a question, is should one take debt to grow or not? And if so, why and how much? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I remember my professor from business school, going back 50 years, 54 years. His advice was very simple, that debt is a double-edged sword. Well, the going is good, but then when the going is not good, you fall on the sharp side of... So to me, that mantra is there. And again, you're all a younger lot, but most industrialists in India grew through a time when there was a mantra or an equation. Equity 1, debt 2. That was the mantra on which all businesses got built up to the mid-90s. Yeah. And then everything changed. Now, going was good, it worked. Going, slight problems, you fell on that too. The debt basically meant that you had a challenge with the company. So I would think on the debt equity front today, in today's world, definitely you should be very cautious in taking debt, and equity should be your primary focus.
So, sir, what is important for a young entrepreneur to follow through with an idea that he thinks will work, but is completely different to what others have done, or to take a safe path of repeating something that you know has been successful and has been done already?
I would think that's the best situation to be in, which, he knows something, he knows that it's going to be right. There is risk. As earlier on, the earlier panel was saying, there's always risk. So I think that's the best situation to be in. You identify opportunity, others are not identifying opportunity. Yes, there is risk, but that's the path to take.
And so hundreds of people would have asked you, what is your advice for the youth of the country? And your pearls of wisdom have reached many, many places and many, many minds. But I want to ask you one thing. If there's one thing that the youth of today needs to focus on in their entrepreneurial pursuit, what would that be?
I would think single-minded focus on the fact that there is opportunity. And again, there are so many things that are happening simultaneously out there. So I go back to that, I'm oft repeated, I would say, look for those dots out there and try to connect them. And, you will find your star very clearly, which is your own business. And or the business you build. So wish everybody great success on that path.
Thank you so much, sir. As we are nearing the close of this session, a few quick, fun questions to bring this to an end. So, sir, one success after another, innumerable feathers in your cap, numerous awards, the Padma Bhushan. What do you account this success to?
Yeah, I don't actually look at that. It may be, you may say, oh, this is a cliche. But to me, the technology that we use in ICICI Bank to actually create a banking system which was completely different for the nation, probably is what I remember in my mind. Not that I should be remembered for that, but I remember in my mind, because a lot of other people have done probably better things. In fact, today's fintech world, I think there are players there who have built much better things than what we would have created. But for me, that remains in my mind.
And so moving on to some of your passions, I believe you enjoy reading a fair bit. So the last book that you read?
Yeah, you see, I don't read too often. I take ideas from books. But the last book that I took, which I read and took, I would have read many, is Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. It is slightly old now. I'm saying that book because that changed the way I looked at things. And behavior as something which is integral to doing business. So the behavioral part of business, from that point on, came into everything that I did. And that, in a way, I think, probably helped me become a better person. And when I read that book, I thought if I had read this book when my children were growing up, maybe I would have been a better father. So the message probably to me was that try to read as much as you can in areas not related to what you do.
So you also have a passion for old Hindi songs. So if you had to pick one of the following, which one? Lata Mangeshkar, Kishore Kumar, Pandit Jasraj?
Mukesh.
Okay, clear. Talking of children, sir, if you had to pick one industry for your grandchildren where you'd think you'd want them to be working in when they grow up, which one would it be?
I would think that they should work in a business or an industry where things change so fast, and the childlike excitement of doing something different endures through your life. And in fact, if I look back, that's what gave me fun from 96, 97 onwards to date. It's like doing something new every day. When I go to office, I'm like a kid with toys. Maybe you laugh at that, but that's how I feel. That there is something different happening.
Sachin, Dhoni, Rohit, Virat, your favorite cricketer?
I think Dhoni was a great leader, so I would pick him.
And if there's something from his journey that you think would be all of us as entrepreneurs should look at, what would that be?
Grit. Yeah, this grit, I think, stands out very clearly.
And last question, sir. I read in one of your older interviews that you have a passion for fast racing and for Formula One. So what's the one lesson that you may have absorbed from there and applied to business?
Yeah. So I used to say this actually to the team at ICICI long back. Racing teaches you one thing, how to drive at speed, but within limits. Mm-hmm. So how do you take that corner? What is the art, the science, and your skill, all three together, that allows you to take that corner at the highest possible speed, but not get into a crash or not skid out of the race. I think that if you can master. And another lesson from Formula One is the speed at which the pit stop happens. So basically the tires are changed in 2.5 seconds. The entire pit stop from driving into the pit where the speed limiter to getting out of the pit, 21 or 22 seconds. Of which the actual working on the car is 2.5 seconds. If we can imagine we get that into our businesses, I think we can build a completely
Efficiency.
different sort of business.
Absolutely. So as we draw this session to a close, what can I say? Insightful, stimulating, thought-provoking, engaging, to say the least. So, thank you so much for this absolute candid and enriching fireside chat. You've been an inspiration to all of us in this room, and your visionary leadership is one that all of us must learn from. Thank you once again.
Thank you, and all good wishes to all the people that are here.